Welcome back, everyone. We're back to the Cool Clubs podcast. Today, we've got someone very special from Taylormade joining us, Matthew Adams. Matthew, I don't want to do you any disservice. Please introduce yourself to our listeners, our viewers, and tell us what you do for Taylormade.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jack. It's good to be with you. My name is Matthew Adams. I'm the program manager of product training here at Taylormade. Essentially, my main role is how club fitters, retail golf sales associates, anyone in that side of the industry, how they learn about Taylormade products, the curriculum that is involved, how we actually do our messaging, what training platforms we offer this product training on. All of that gets rolled into a major program that we have, and I head up those efforts for product training.
No small feat. It's a huge training program across the country, I'm sure. So
yes,
you sound like the man for the job.
Yeah, so I'm out. I do a lot here from headquarters in Carlsbad, but I'm also out on the road a lot as well. I want to be on the front lines, talking to fitters, talking to sales associates, really making them also masters of these products. So it's good to be able to train them in person as well.
Awesome. Well, the whole premise of this conversation is really for our viewers is letting people know that Taylormade are done, as far as I know, in terms of physical club releases for the year 2024 as it stands as a calendar year. So I really want to let people know what we've got in store, what they can come and expect to see on the shelf when we're fitting. And then let's talk about those products a little bit as we go through. And I know you just touched on it a little bit. You have some tour experience and some tour nuggets, and we're going to save a Scottie Scheffler tour story for the end of this.
For sure. Yes.
Okay. So hang in there for that, everyone. Yeah. But I want to kick it off with one of your latest releases, which I don't know if you know, but we do robot testing here at Cool Clubs, and we robot tested the brand new P7CB and the 770, and they just killed it. Yeah. Super, super accurate, super, super consistent. So tell us a little bit about how they were born.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It came from an essence of trying to understand, we spotlighted 770 and MC, and with the popularity of iron set blending or iron comboing iron sets, we realized we started to hear back from the marketplace and from fitters that there's just too much of a gap between 770 and MC. And, there were some criticisms specific to MC, but then what we were hearing specific to MC, such as maybe it was a little too thin, even for, the most advanced players, a little intimidating, right? They could use a little extra forgiveness than what the MC was offering them. And then we shifted gears. We looked at 770. We kind of heard the opposite, a little too thick, a little too speed performance, right? And so we knew that the trend definitely, not only going on tour, but also at retail and fitting wise, is to blend these sets. These, advanced player irons, players are starting to be more open to the fact that, maybe their 4-iron, maybe their 5-iron actually needs to be a different head model. So in the development of new CB and new 770, we really wanted to make all efforts possible that those two irons can be interweaved together, no matter where the loft break point is, where you change that head model. And so we really addressed that MC and previous generation 770 really had some, conflict with blending. So we wanted to get rid of that issue for sure. But we also wanted to fine tune the issues with MC and really resolve that. And so that's why with the new CB, and that's part of why this just isn't a new generation of MC. We did so much change to it that it really needed its own identity. And so that's where CB comes into play. And yes, MC and CB, if you nitpick, they're about the same thing, right? They both have cavities to some degree, but just a name change alone allowed us like a true, starting point, if you will. Like a new dawn, a new true iron is born here with CB that we're really excited about. And so CB allowed us to address those issues. So for shaping, we know this type of player, if they set it down, it's love at first sight, or maybe they don't even consider it. So there's a lot of pressure on our teams here who are designing these heads that the shaping has to be right, but also the performance as well. So that's what took, the 2 years of development of refining the shape. We got a little crafty because You can increase the top line a little and the sole a little. And yeah, that increases perimeter weighting a touch. And so, yes, that would be measurably different to say, yeah, they're a little bit more forgiving, but we actually wanted to find a way, how could we make this iron play as though it's a bigger iron, but still keep that player's compact, better shape to it. So we got pretty creative. We actually, in our forging process, we stamped that head 5 times under 1,500 pounds of pressure, which is with 2,000 pounds of pressure. Most of the industry, when it comes to high-end forgings, they typically max out at about 1,500 pounds of pressure. Taylormade takes it up to 2,000. So we really have this mindset that we want to be and want to own the best forging process possible. So after the 4th time of stamping those CB heads, we actually take a little break and we will drill out the sole pocket of those irons, and we will put tungsten in there and our new MCC material in there. And essentially what that does, that displaces the weight in the head. So we're still keeping that small profile blade shaped iron with CB, but the performance to try and, meet those needs that what players wanted out of that iron, which was to make it a little bit more forgiving, we actually did want to make it noticeably forgiving, to be able to say, yes, we've answered the criticisms, we're coming out. There's no longer an issue of it not being forgiving. So we have the perfect blend now because of that weight displacement story with the sole pockets, that we're able to have something very, very high crafted with how it's made, how it's manufactured, but also just a little hint of technology that's allowing us to make that CB iron really address any kind of need that a player could have, whether they're a scratch golfer up to like a 5 handicap, because they can be very picky on what they want and what they want that ball flight to be. So we work tirelessly, one, to get the shape right, because we know if they set it down and it just looks off to them, they might not even want to hit it. So there's a lot of pressure to get the shape right. And then with 770, it was the other end of the spectrum where, the better players were saying, it's a little too thick. It's a little, I really don't need this speed to it. I'm more concerned with workability. And we also heard that we needed to kind of touch up the interaction of the blade and the leading edge and how that 770 entered the turf. Because for this type of player, they really depend upon how that blade goes through the turf. That turf interaction is pivotal to their performance. And so we wanted to make sure that the new 770 aligns very consistently with this new CB iron. So turf interaction was also addressed as well.
Golfers are fussy, and we know that, especially in the fitting industry. It's terrible. So you even going after this space was pretty incredible. And like you're talking about, it's kind of super nuancy little things that you're looking at. And I can totally attest to what you're saying with the MC. I would actually probably love to play the MC. But that sole thickness for me just kind of dug in too many times out of 10, let's call it. And I thought, hey, I just can't get there. And then going after 770, that was kind of just like you said, it was just this jump to this next style of golf club.
Yeah.
And I was in no man's land. I'm not good enough to play the blade. I didn't quite want to play the 770. So all of a sudden, when I hear the CBs out, I'm like, oh, this is the spot. And I think there's a ton of golfers in this space that are decent players that need exactly what we're talking about. The sole through the ground. I think people talk about it, right? But in our fitting, especially iron fitting, there's a couple of things. And this is what you guys sound like you've gone after, right? Consistency of front to back dispersion, spin, land angle, and then how the club gets through the ground. This player isn't looking at plus 5 yards. They don't care. No. They're just trying to find that spot on the green every single time. And touching on your point again of talking about blending, I think people are always blending golf clubs, right? But the stories are coming out there now more, especially in the mainstream of golf clubs, where the P series especially is like now this family where you can blend a lot of different versions together. Without having to work too hard to do it, de-loft in and out, and you start messing with offset and bounce. And when we tested these two things, those clubs just were perfect matches where you could just interchange wherever you wanted in the set to find your little bit more real estate maybe on the 770, but you're not trading off any consistency or spin. It was just a really, really good blend of golf clubs. Amazing.
Yes. Yeah, the effort has definitely paid off. We saw that very early on with tour adoption when, Rory testing it here at the Kingdom and then wanting to take the 4-iron with him. It was just one of those things where, tour players, it's tough to come out with new irons for tour right in the middle of July, but that's, we wanted to introduce these to tour and it was July, and it's kind of tough because the messaging is, hey, here's what's new. But then that tour player might say, well, I'm in the heart of my season. I'm not really in this position to change out a whole set. But, they are willing to maybe flirt a little with the long iron. If we
Right.
can get those long irons just a little bit better for them, they're open to that. And that's why some of the early tour adoption stories we saw were specifically just those long irons.
Yeah, I think
So,
it's a tough one. One thing that people think about, I mean, there's a lot of hype and marketing around drivers, right? And there's a driver in play this week. And I think that's okay because you change one club in a bag, like you're saying, maybe a 4-iron. When you're talking about changing 7 or 8 clubs in a player's bag, they've all of a sudden got to recalibrate this whole spectrum rather than just one area of it. And that's a big ask, especially mid-season, right?
it is.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. So
But
now that we're sort of in this off season now, you're going to see a lot more, players really testing, really switching out because they have the time, they have the freedom, that they're able to really invest in how their bags are looking towards the end of this year and then also going into early next year.
yeah. Well, this actually gives us. I was going to jump into a different line of question, but I think we just kind of stay on the irons for a second because this kind of highlights that family now of irons on the shelf. So maybe you can just run us through from blade tour through to the top of the bag, what that kind of gamut of options is.
Yeah, so a lot of what you're going to see with some of the new marketing, the ad spaces, when you start to see P Series story be told from TaylorMade, it's actually going to start all the way, and we're kind of spotlighting the P7 TW. That's going to be there simply because it keeps on winning on tour. And you know who I'm talking about, but also Tommy Fleetwood. So it's one of those things where when we say P Series has won on tour, we want to actually have that image of the
Yeah.
TW iron because holistically, we really feel we're in a good position where we have that, full strong offering. So we have everything from the TW now with the new CB, going up the line to new generation 770. And of course, our powerhouse, our star quarterback, if you will, is that 790. So that's staying right there. That alone could have its own marketing campaign, but we really wanted to focus on P Series holistically and really understanding that here's 4 strong options and, have with it, whether it's blending iron sets together or a specific model that you can say, wow, TaylorMade is, they really have changed things up. I had some experience with the MC before or 770 before, but now this new lineup, man, they really, paid off their efforts because it's just doing so well. Just like with your testing, we're hearing success stories across the country like that. And it all started with our staffers. Some of, one of our early samples are going out to, our own players that are on contract, at green grass facilities around the country. They're some of the first players to get these sets and they couldn't wait to get into them. So a lot of the early feedback came from people, right on those golf courses and those facilities. And the feedback's been great. They're passing that on to their membership and their customers that come in to see them to get fit and instruction wise. So P Series, I don't think it's been in a better position than where it is currently today.
No, I agree. I mean, obviously, everyone knows about P79. It's just dominated for so long now.
Sure.
But adding those strings to the bow down that end there, for that player, you're talking fine gains, but those fine gains turn into, a percentage gain greater than maybe a higher handicap golfer on the golf course when you're hitting more greens and making more putts. It's huge.
Yeah.
Going out of the P Series, there's still more in the iron category, right? We've still got the family line, the QI Core and the QI HL, which are really, really good, irons for the category they're in.
Definitely. So, QI, if I could expand upon QI, that was something where, that's the great space race in this industry is make the best game improvement iron possible, right? And so, the main message there is let's design something that goes high, far, and straight. And so, with all that effort on trying to really show that noticeable difference and getting more distance, we actually started in our own testing. We started to notice some trend that with game improvement irons, especially in the longer irons, your 4, your 5, we
Well,
started to really see that, you know, even on robot hits that are supposed to be going straight, we started to see this almost like cut spin effect where the balls were just trailing off to the right. And we wanted to like, is there something there? Let's investigate that. Why on this, what should be a perfectly, struck shot going right down the center, why is it tailing off to the right? And so we started to do some analysis to try and explain that because, we're very curious. We've got plenty of smart people here and the engineers are like, let's solve this. Let's find out what's going on.
well,
And we started to notice that as these irons get very, very thin and fast faces, you start to have an area out on the toe of the iron that actually starts to get essentially a little too flexible. And
well,
we start to see some inconsistent flexing from heel to toe. And if
well,
that toe region is flexing a little too much, then it's late to respond. So the ball is leaving those club faces with an element of cut spin. And that was explaining why we saw this drifting off to the right. So that was an opportunity where we saw, well, is anybody else in the industry addressing this issue? And let's solve for this. And so what we did was we decided to actually look at the mass pads that are behind the face of the iron. And if we could start to strategically place weight out on that toe to make sure that it's not over flexing and that it's
well,
more in line and more consistent with what the rest of the face is doing. And it really brought a dramatic effect of making those shots, whether it was in the center or slightly out on the toe, that was
well,
far more straighter. And so we minimize that effect of game improvement irons having the tendency
well,
to have the balls leave with cut spin. And it was one of those things where, we kind of, the industry itself, we're so ramped up on speed and allowing customers to say, yeah, I'm hitting it further with TaylorMade irons, right? And so every company wants to be that way. So we all made faster faces and it
well,
was delivering results. But at the same time, it's like a sports car. Yes, you're going faster, but you know what? You're leaking a little bit of oil here. And we decided, let's fix that part because we don't want players continuing to, yes, they're hitting it farther and higher. That's great. But if all that speed and additional launch is also resulting in some drifting and some, dispersion that's going a little bit too much to the right or whether to the left if they're left-handed, it's one of those situations where we needed to clean that up from an engineering standpoint and really address it because no one else was really paying attention to it. And from a fitting perspective, that was one of the trends we were also seeing because fitters were saying,
well,
from a lie impact, everything's straight, everything's fine. What's explaining this drifting effect off to the right? I don't want to put this customer in a more upright lie. They may already be 1 or 2, and that's where the best strikes are occurring. But why am I still seeing this trailing off to the right? And fitters at that time didn't know the story. They didn't know that it was actually a properties of these faster faces that was causing this additional side spin. And
well,
so now that we've addressed that, now we can have a proper lie angle fitted
well,
without the negative effect of seeing that side spin take over. And now fitters are starting to realize, yeah, TaylorMade fixed that side spin issue. And so now
well,
thinking that I needed to go more upright for this customer to correct that, I'm not
well,
going to do that. Because, there's a certain point as a fitter, you're like, I don't want to go much more upright. There's that fine line that's
yeah.
super low.
Starts making a make a bad swing after a while.
Yeah.
Forces the over the top move even harder.
True. So for that QI iron, it was really cool to be able to say, hey, let's investigate this. Let's solve for this. And we really did. And to be able to do it strategically with the face mass pads behind there and really just because that's the thing. When you look at a driver, the deepest part of a driver is in the center.
Yep.
But if you look at an iron, the deepest part of an iron is way out on the toe. So that toe area is actually flexing more.
Yep.
And so that has the tendency, if done just right, will start to create some cut spin. So we fixed that problem. So we're really happy with when we launched QI. Then also the looks of QI. You know, we really wanted to overstate simplicity. We wanted to look good and modern, but there's a slippery slope as well. You can start to get a little too aggressive in styling, and we just wanted something clean and classy, but also that definitely speaks to a modern twist to it. And so that's why we actually, that's chrome plated. You know, that's a polished chrome. We wanted to bring in that richness to it that previous iron, game improvement irons, you know, hadn't had from TaylorMade in quite some time. So, and then it also allowed us the opportunity to bring on the HL, the higher and lighter, you know, lighter weight components, 2-degree weaker loft package. You know, obviously game improvement irons are going to go after that middle-aged to younger player, but we also have that segment where game improvement irons are going to go for that older market as well. And with those slower swing speed players, you know, we needed to address, let's make those items, those components lighter for them, potentially bringing up speed a little, club head speed, but let's also make sure that we're not giving them such strong lofts, because as you know, with iron fitting, it's not essentially total distance, it's carry distance.
Yep.
You know, and that's part of the issue sometimes that fitters face is a lot of customers are used to that driver fitting experience where there it is, it really is, let's see how far we can get you. And then sometimes customers can come into an iron fitting experience and they still have that same mindset. Like, let's see which iron I hit further. And as fitters know, sometimes you have to kind of educate that customer to be like, well, I don't even want to tell you the total distance because no one's going to care if you're over the green, how far you hit it, right? You know, because with irons, we're really trying to hit true targets, you know, whether it's an average player just trying to hit the green or a better player just trying to get really close to that flag on the green, right? So the emphasis on carry distance allows us to have an offering like the HL version to address that slower swing speed player.
We're at Cool Clubs, like I understate enough how, like, don't sleep on HL for anything in any line. You know, in irons it just does such a favor. I actually, in my own fittings, I kind of delete total from my number set for irons.
Yeah,
I get look at, you know, ball speed, I look at peak height, RPMs, and land angle. And I just say to the person, once the ball's hitting the deck, you don't know what it's going to do. You can't rely on those 2 yards. You just want to control, like, how steep it's hit the ground, and that's your job. From then, and you strike it in the middle, that's where you get. So the other thing is that lighter weight, that can help people square the face up a little more, right? Too heavy and they're kind of hanging back. So that can help people get leaking it right. And you've also got the added thing where distance, although, like we just said, it's definitely not the number one, number two even. It's the higher loft for players. There's a certain point when your speed deteriorates in the up as you're working up towards the forehand. The clubs start to carry the same because they're not in the air long enough. And then all you're looking at is how far they run out. So what I love about the HL is it gives us that opportunity to say, look, yes, there's more loft here, but you're actually gaining distance for that loft because you're actually getting flight again. And I think a lot of people skip over HL because they think, it's to hit it shorter, but it's not about that. It's about optimizing ball flight.
Right. And we know, there is that preconceived notion of, what are people going to think of me if they see that I'm playing the extra game improvement version, right? And that was actually thought of. And that's why the badging of the HL is so minimal, because we know that perception matters. And we didn't want to call out in any regard, because sometimes we actually got a little bit of that feedback with Stealth HD iron. Right. It just looked like it came from a different planet compared to the standard Stealth, right? They both said Stealth, but wow, were they much, much different in design. And so we took those learnings and we said, well, with QI, let's not have a full departure where it's different design language. Let's make these essentially look exactly the same, but let's sneak in that little HL in the badge just for an added touch for identity on what head it actually is. But overall, the looks, people are like, it's great. I can get into the HL. It's not screaming out that I need that extra lift and that, lighter weight package. So we really met the best of both worlds with the QI HL for sure.
Yeah. And it really just fills out the iron line. You sort of P Series. P Series truly does cover pretty much all the bases, but then you stack on the QI family on top, and it's just like, you can walk into a cool club store and you fit in location, and you can go through, you can combo, you can stick with one. You've just got every player covered there.
Yeah, indeed, for sure.
Thank you for such a detailed run on the irons. It's I don't know how long I've got you for. Hopefully a while, because
Bring it on. I can do this all day for sure.
Well, let's go to the other end of the top end of the bag here. Let's talk about drivers. This is now the third iteration, I think, of Carbon. Right, we've gone Stealth 2, and now we're in QI.
Yeah.
And you took a different approach. Like, this is the first time we saw TaylorMade really, at least openly, discuss MOI and going after a 10K story and forgiveness as part of this package, because TaylorMade, I think, has for a while sat at least with the consumer as well. Scottie Scheffler's playing it, Tiger Woods, whoever's got these drivers in their hand, these are like elite players. But now you've, a bit like the irons, you've opened up this spectrum of who can play a TaylorMade driver, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, and the one thing to mention with this generation of drivers is gone is the HD, that high draw model.
Yeah.
It's gone. And a lot of that was trying to, my role was to educate people on why is it gone? Because you can't have a draw driver and 10K at the same time.
Yep.
And so we knew, and we've been hearing for years, that customers are far less likely, or they maybe have some hesitation now because draw drivers have been out for so long. It almost seems someone has experienced at some point in time a draw driver. And with the investment of these new drivers and what customers pay for, they understand that, they don't want a product that's only meant to go, high far with some left bias, right? Because yes, it may in the short term fix their chronic fade or their slice, but then let's say something happened, whether they get a tip from a friend or they actually go get some instruction, and now all of a sudden they have a club that wants to go high, far, and left on them, right? Now it's working against them. So that was part of the beauty of 10K is no matter what your shot shape, overall, everything's just going to be straighter. You're not investing, you're not buying into a product that only has a one story to it, right? So HD, we may never come out with a draw driver ever again. 10K changed so much for us, and the customer really resonated with, no matter where I hit it, I just feel that head working for me. And that was part of that great stability story. And so, yes, this is the third generation, but something that we've been working on for a long time. And that's where the naming convention came from with QI10, the quest for inertia. And if we could get to 10,000 MOI. And so it just felt right. Let's call it QI10, because we finally reached that goal, that journey that we've been on for several years. And we didn't know we could really get there. It was always sort of a pie in the sky thought. Could we ever make a 10,000 MOI driver and still have high ball speeds?
Right.
Because that's always the trade-off. A lot of people don't realize when our engineers are designing a driver, they're going down a road and they eventually get to a fork in the road and they say, are we going to make this driver fast or are we going to make it forgiving? That's always been, the breaking point for us. Are we going to concentrate on speed and distance, or are we going to concentrate more on forgiveness? And you've seen models like, Sim was very fast.
Yep.
And then the marketplace said, yeah, it goes far, but man, if it was just a little bit more forgiving. And so Sim 2 came out and people were like, oh yeah, it's definitely easier to hit, but I don't know if I'm hitting it farther than Sim, right? And it's that seesaw battle. And we saw that again with Stealth and Stealth 2. Stealth was very fast, because that was the whole thing, right? Could a carbon face keep up? Could it really outperform titanium? So the pressure was on us to make Stealth go very far. And the only thing we really heard from Stealth was, man, if it just was a little bit easier to hit. Well, guess what came out the next year? Forgiveness, right? We're trying to get you distance and we're trying to get you forgiveness. So we came out with forgiveness, and that was the goal. But little by little, we knew, like, we don't want just these incremental changes, or this seesaw battle where one year it's fast, the next year it's more forgiving. And that was the ultimate quest. Can truly not have that breaking point and not have to say we're either going fast or we're going forgiving. So that quest, which has been taking years, really opened up once we started to use that carbon phase. That really said, okay, there's definitely a pathway to get there. And that's what allowed us that 10K, where we have this ultimate stability story with no real trade-offs to distance. Because normally you go extra forgiving, you start to lose distance.
Yeah.
And that's
we have Dr. Mace out with it. He does our testing for MOI and CG, and we just look at this design space, which is essentially those two things together. And just as soon as you start dragging CG back, which is increasing MOI, you lose the energy transfer. So it's like this fine line, and then obviously you've got material properties that can help that. And I think this is the super exciting space for Taylormade. We're only on iteration 3 of carbon, whereas we're on iteration who knows what of titanium face for everyone. So I feel like there's more to come. I don't know what's coming, but I just feel like there is more to come.
Yeah, and we're really excited with what's opened up now in our world of design and engineering that carbon faces are allowing us to explore now. So we're definitely not stopping. It's full speed ahead in that regard. But beyond the 10K, just that core model, let's talk about the versatility of that club. Something we did not even see coming ourselves was how much tour adoption with the standard head.
I was just going to pin you on that and say, we saw Rory go from the tour through to the core model. And I think everyone's like, well, what does this mean? And maybe you can touch on that. What does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jack, the early images of marketing around this building when we were getting ready to launch QI10, we had the athletes up there and we already put the LS head in with the pictures. We thought for sure Rory's going to play the LS, Scottie's going to play the LS. We already had those creatives made. And then when we found out that no, they've actually, transitioned over to the core model, we're just like, all right, then what's going on there? And a lot of it was same story. If you can increase stability without seeing that drop off in speed, it was an easy choice for those players. They'll take the best of both worlds. You want to give them both, they'll take it for sure. So that core model has been quite the surprise and probably the best overall balanced club between stability and distance. And that's why now it's commonplace to see, a 2 or 5 handicapper, they're in the core model. But then in the same regard, that LS, for someone who said, I launch it high, I'm very fast swing speed, I spin it a lot. Well, that LS definitely answers the call, right? To the point where we were actually seeing a lot of our early staffers around the country when we were doing staff fittings around the country. They were going LS 9 degree, and it didn't take too long. They started to see the launch results, and they're like, well, I'm not used to this. And so we would then, we would first address the loft sleeve. We'd turn the loft up a little. And then it took the next step. Well, let's try the 10-5 head, right? And so that's when we started to realize this is the progression. The progression is let's move launch up. Let's get more forgiveness. And so if you are in that LS head, maybe you're in a static loft that's a little bit higher than what you had in the previous stealth generations. But it also was common to start seeing people just transition right into that core model.
Right. Well, that's one of the fitting things, as you know, is you've got that option of sleeve, but the sleeve may have some implications to lie angle or face angle at address.
For sure.
And you get to a point and you start saying, well, this guy doesn't want to see that kind of loft. And then you go, well, that's where core sits, right? You just core in the loft that they want to do. It gives them the launch parameters and the result down range.
Indeed. Yeah, for sure. So very excited with how successful it's been in the marketplace and on tour. And just really changing people's perceptions on, what large MOI drivers can do these days. But a lot of that is attributed to our engineering and just the added materials that we're using. More carbon, we have this graph where it shows all our previous driver models over the past several years. and the MOI slowly goes up and up. And it's no consequence or coincidence rather that it was because we're using more carbon, right?
Yeah.
There's a definite, payoff for more carbon. And to get to 10K, we just said, let's max out the carbon. Let's really do it. And then we ultimately achieved that goal of 10,000 MOI. So it's been a very popular, successful product line with our drivers and into our fairway woods. So we couldn't be more proud that we really achieved what we wanted to.
Yeah, well, let's go into fairway woods while we're there. Something that I think, obviously, you and I know in the industry, but the TaylorMade fairway wood, especially the Tour, is one of the most dominant things that we sell. Not putting any shade on the core model, but the Tour or the Max, right? Especially in this version, but the Tour has just been so popular. It's so fast. It's so long that we end up backing people off the 5 woods. And then opening the face, it's like this anti-hook monster that goes for miles and miles. It's just awesome. And obviously you've got the diversity of the depth of heads. And I want to maybe hone in a little bit on the other end of that into the Max model. Again, nomenclature goes away from HL or HD, and it's like, okay, this is a Max. It's a forgiving golf club. But that shallow profile opens the doors for people that have struggled with, getting the club off the deck or getting it airborne enough. And big fan of the Max model.
Indeed. Yeah, that's the thing is, some customers, typically those that know that they're average to slow swing speed players, they're not hitting 3-wood off the tee box much. It's usually they get a lot of use out of their driver. They're using it on all their par 5s, all the par 4s. And so for that player, fairway woods really have one main goal, and that's to hit it off the fairway, right? And so the shallower face of the Max model really come into play. So we have a larger head profile for the forgiveness story, but that shallower face really helping with launch for sure. So we really wanted to make sure that we meet that specific need. And then that core model, that's where you see the versatility. They're going to use them off the fairway for sure, but you also have those players that when they get to a tighter par 4 or something tricky where they know that I need to go 3-wood off the tee here, they want that balance of fairway wood performance, but also tee box performance. And that's why that core model's been so successful for us, because it really just does it all for that player. So not surprising how just continuing down the line, another successful fairway wood from TaylorMade. It's just like we have the market cornered when it comes to just great fairway woods. You see it in Tour where you still have players using, old M series fairway woods. It's like, it's their trusty club. When it comes to Tour players, typically they're like their trusty lob wedge or sand wedge, that's what they want, but also, and that they're hesitant to change something around their short game performance. But what else they're hesitant to change is their fairway wood, because if they really need to hit a fairway, and it's tight and they need to get it straight, if they have a success with the TaylorMade 3-wood, it's tough to get out of the bag. And that's why you just see, the Darrell survey reports that I'm privy to, that I see it, just the TaylorMade numbers that come through on fairway woods. We just keep it going. It's one of those things where when you're a sports team, like, how do you guys just keep on winning? We'll take it. We'll keep the trend going. We're definitely on a hot streak for many years when it comes to our fairways. We just got some magic potion when it comes to our fairway woods.
As you started that conversation in my head, I was reeling back. I was going, okay, which was when did this begin? And I think I got back to M1 in my head, and I was like, I had M1. I thought that was pretty damn solid too. I can't pin it. And this was way back. So it really is dominant, and it's not just Tour as well. I think people really love the core models out there. Like you say, fairway woods are so, I call them a luxury club. If you can hit one, great. It's kind of a luxury because they're tough. They're not hitting up on them. You're not hitting down on them. You have to find that perfect moment. So if you can find one that you hit consistently, then keep that thing.
Yeah. And the cosmetics too. So QI, this line, you don't see, whether it's in the driver, you don't see that titanium break point, right? Yep. Where it goes from titanium to carbon. And with the fairway woods, you don't see that break point of steel going into the carbon. That carbon crown, that infinity crown that we have, for a lot of people, like, oh, this looks very clean, looks really, it's modern but clean. Some people, when we eliminated that break point, they were like, wow, these really look polished and refined. And
Yeah.
so just the cosmetics too, so here we are, we're benefiting from more carbon in the crown, but now we're going over that break point of the titanium, whether it's in the driver or steel in the fairway wood, and you just have a more, classy, polished look to it. And so just setting it down again, it's one of those love at first sight. You set it down, you're like, all right, I want to try this out, and so just a new visual, because people had been expecting that break point, and some people are like, looks kind of chunky to me and so forth. So now that's eliminated. Now we've gone back to that clean crown that you're looking at.
No, I like that.
And that helped as well.
And that family runs straight into the hybrids, right? That's what I like about it too. You don't have to match up, certainly driver, fairway, and hybrid, but you can. I think maybe the max player probably does, and all the attributes remain the same in terms of the player that wants to maybe manipulate the ball with the tour and the hybrid, and then the core kind of does it all, and the max just helps you get the thing in the air. It really sits true for that whole line.
Yeah, and that's what's good about the hybrids for sure. Our rescues, from a fitting perspective, you can just show that customer, you can, compare the head, you can show them and say, look at this face depth here. I'm noticing that, we could have a little bit more lift, and just giving that visual allows them to see that, that shallower face is going to slide up underneath there a little bit more. They kind of get that visual in their head, and it just makes sense to customers at that point. So that's why I always recommend showing them the face depth, beyond explaining the tech and so forth, just showing them, why you would be hitting it higher, why we're trying to achieve this goal by switching you into a different rescue head.
And why you've got a rescue is basically maybe you've run out of steam with the irons being able to get them airborne. And you've got to get that ball in the air. You're starting to replace a 4-iron, and you're almost at that conversation where you were with the irons again, where hybrids kind of distance may matter for some, maybe in the tour version, but certainly as you get down towards the max, it starts behaving like an iron. And again, we're talking about get it in the air, get it stopping, and know where it's going to end up.
Yeah, similar to we touched upon the HL with the QI iron and the HL version. When it came to the rescues, it was almost like the max is sort of like that HL version. Like we're really addressing a specific launch need from that player, really trying to recapture them, and also helping that conversation of, let's replace your 5-iron. I think it's time to replace the 5-iron. Let's try this out. And just having something in that max rescue that we have, just allowing players with that confidence. Because sometimes you have to think about, those irons, yes, they're game improvement. They give you confidence, but sometimes, turf conditions, whether it's in the rough or whatever, that head starts to look smaller, right?
Yeah.
Or, a long par 3, courses are trying to, fight back a little. So those par 3s are starting to get a little bit longer, a little bit more challenging, and players don't necessarily want to move up in the tee box, and so we're going to be like, you can still play from the same tees, but you're going to reach that par 3 with a little bit more confidence, because we're going to replace that 4 or that 5-iron now.
Yeah. It's I'm a hybrid player. I have been for a long time actually. I've never gone into the 7-wood or 4-wood range, and I still play a 4-iron. But I've got a 3 hybrid in there because it does give you that little bit extra than I can't get out of an iron. And I think I love about hybrid is it doesn't give me the immediate 7-wood vertical. I can manipulate my flight of my hybrid a bit better than I could a wood or a 3-iron, for instance.
Yeah, that's a common story I heard in the beginning of this year when a lot of the testing and feedback came back from fitters, was exactly what you just said. Yeah. Common story.
Yeah, great. We've already touched on the irons, and I love that story. So let's go into the more precision, the wedges. We've got MG4, we've got the brand new HiToe 4, and we've got the TW. So again, a bit like there's a spectrum there, right? There's all these different player styles covered.
For sure. So with MG, that's something that we're really proud of, just the progression, the improvements that we're making with each model. The majority of the improvements are direct feedback from players, whether it's our staffers around the country and our staff team that speaks to them. or even, people like on our side with TaylorMade, Greg Cesario, he's sort of like the wedge whisperer. We don't have a name that we promote behind our wedges and so forth. But, Greg Cesario is someone that has, he's been here now 15 years, and if he knows a thing or two about what good players want out of wedges, I mean, I would often see him in our tour department grinding his own version of the soul of what that player wants. So he's had sort of 15 years of feedback of what wedges need to perform and look like, and the shaping and how they interact with the turf. So now that Greg is way more involved with the design and what goes into our wedges, really that MG4 series is our most proud achievement of that development. So I would say the biggest thing is the raw face, right? And oftentimes, even still to this day, there's confusion in the marketplace on, why do raw faces create more spin, right? Most of that general, not completely knowledgeable customer or player would say, oh, well, it's the rust. It's like, it's like sandpaper, right? It's going to create sort of that rough texture. And it's not. A lot of it is that education. That raw face allows us to make sure that the only thing meeting that golf ball at contact is the groove. You can have the most aggressive groove possible, but the moment you put a plating material over it, or you do a PVD dark application over it, you're creating that boundary layer that would now be in between the ball and the groove. So we're very much staying with raw. There's too much benefits to raw. And when you look at tour use, not only are the majority of wedges on tour raw, with faces being raw, but the entire head is raw, right? Yeah. They don't want any plating on it at all. So beyond just the added spin, because you're really just connecting ball with groove with the raw face, you also are allowing those wedges that are primarily used of a soft steel, you're impacting that soft steel. So it sounds softer, it feels soft, because you're not hitting a hard plating that's over the top of that face.
Yeah.
So there's a feel benefit to MG4 as well. And then finally, an anti-glare benefit, right?
I think that's a huge one, especially in the desert out here. I've looked over plenty of chrome wedges and got the purple dot in my eye. You can't see the ball.
Yeah, good point. So so more spin, better feel, anti-glare. It's no reason that raw face is something that we're continuing to go with. And then the spin tread, the laser etching that we do on those faces, because the groove can only do so much, right? We wanted to have something where we said, can we have additional clearance of debris, whether it's water, grass, dirt? Again, don't put all the pressure on the grooves. They can only do so much. Let's help them out. And that spin tread, the strong laser etching that you see along that face, that's why we call it spin tread. It's like a tire. Let's get even more debris off the main channels. And again, it just adds to the spin story, because spin wins when it comes to wedges. So we just feel that MG4 really completes the whole perspective on what could be desired by a player when it comes to the wedge, the look, the spin, the feel. And then we have that TW grind. We've got the MG4 series, but then we have this TW grind. And you look at the 56 and you look at the 60, and they look a lot different. Right. And it's like, well, they both say TW, but I'm seeing some different geometry on how these soles look. And a lot of it is that 56 really is meant for full shots, occasionally open it up around tight lies around the green. But then you look at that 60, and it's almost like a little bit of a mid-bounce wedge. And you're just like, this is going to be good out of the bunker. This is going to help me out of the bunker, because, Tiger, and better players, they don't always want shallow soled, really low bounce wedges out of soft conditions or out of bunkers. So we wanted that TW in that 60 is really saying, hey, let's get something for the better player, but that's going to help them out of bunkers.
Talking about bunkers, go into the HiToe, right? Like, this is the bunker dominator.
I'll tell you, the HiToe 4, one of the best things is now we have the 5 grinds. There's one grind in there, the wide grind, where I call that out when I'm doing training groups. I said, here's your get out of bunker free card. this is your pass to get out of the bunker. Your best bet to get out of the bunker is with that ATV, or I'm sorry, the ATW grind.
Yep.
Really, really does well. But speaking of HiToe 4, again, that's a situation. It's similar to when we started talking P series, and as a company, we said, okay, well, how can we improve MC? What are we hearing? And then what are we hearing from 770? Let's take all these notes and let's really make sure that when we come back to respond, we come back strong. Well, with HiToe 3, what we started to hear was, it's only a loft choice. You go in and you're like, oh, so I only need to choose loft. There was only a one grind story with HiToe 3. And the other thing was the design language of HiToe 3. When we were developing HiToe 3, a lot of it was, well, sometimes that larger face wedge can be a little polarizing for better players. And we want better players to understand that HiToe can benefit them. So let's start to kind of make HiToe 3 look a little bit more like MG3 or MG4, right? And it kind of lost its luster for what it's actually supposed to be. So with HiToe 4, we said, let's get back, let's bring it back, let's get life into big and bold. So it starts with the aged copper finish, which has been a home run. People love the aged copper. As a company, that's a heritage color for us, a legacy copper. So we said, let's bring life into this wedge category again. Let's bring it into HiToe, because when you go into a store, and you look at the selection of wedges, it's a sea of chrome or a sea of satin or black. The aged copper stands out, but stands out in a sort of a luxury watch kind of way. You just sense that, oh, this is something unique. And that's what we want. That's the messaging. It is definitely a unique wedge, full face, that higher toe design. And what comes with that was also, let's bring in grinds. If we really want to attract that better player, understand that maybe, pulling off more confident shots around the green needs a little bit of a larger face with score lines all the way out towards the toe, then let's offer grind options that are going to, cater to those specific needs. And so that's why we have 5 grinds. So we've got the standard, which is going to fit the majority of players for sure. It's your all-encompassing grind. But we also have 3 grinds beyond the standard, and those 3 grinds would be the ATV, the ATX, and the ATC. Now, those 3 grinds are really catering to those nitpicky, better players that want the wedge to interact with the turf a certain way, or they have sand conditions or turf conditions that they want to make sure that wedge is equipped for. So we have those 3 specialized grinds. But then we wanted one grind that was going to help out, was going to give the most help possible for that player. And that's where that wide grind that I was talking about. Because sometimes we talked a little bit about perspective and maybe a little bit of touch of ego when it came to the QI irons coming out with the HL.
Yeah.
Had to hide it in the cavity there. The same thing with that, recreational golfer, they still want a proper looking wedge. They don't want that wedge to, maybe they don't want that QI sand wedge, right?
Right.
They kind of want something that looks like it's really just set up to perform around the greens. And oftentimes that comes as a fault away because a wider grind isn't available. And so when we came out with our wide grind, we really wanted to beef it up there, because if it's one bad habit we see from recreational golfers when it comes to chipping, they get steep and they get deep and they get into chunking it, or the opposite, they get into hitting it thin because they're actually striking right down on it. And so that recreational, average to higher handicap, they get exposed a lot when it comes to chipping.
Yeah.
And we can restore confidence for them just by saying, hey, we know you might not be changing that steep and deep chipping pattern that you tend to have, but at least let's give you a grind that's going to help you out as much as possible. So those larger face wedges are giving that kind of customer more confidence. But then we also have, the standard and then the X, the V, and the C. we want to give the better player just as much confidence, because what is confidence? To the average player, they're just trying to have a good chip and not hit it chunky or thin it, right? That's what confidence looks like around the short game for that player. But then confidence for the better player is, I want to pull off this flop shot from a tight lie, so let's give them something that gives them the confidence to pull that shot off and get really into those finesse little sensitive shots around the green. So we knew we needed to have a grind story with HiToe 4, and we really met that challenge for sure.
And it's not just for the average golfer or, like you say, recreational golfer. The ball is struck out on that high toe when you play out of a bunker. Like, the best players in the world hit it there intentionally. So having grooves there, adding traction to that area is a bonus for any golfer.
Yeah, the tour department here, I mean, they'll tell you Fleetwood's high toe, the wear mark is actually out on the toe.
Yeah.
Out there, I tell in my trainings, I say the average player looks at that extended toe area as an opportunity for them to get bailed out or to help, where the better player looks at that same zone and they look at it as an opportunity of, I'm going to be able to do what I want even more so.
Yeah.
Because, those players aren't afraid to hit a aggressive flop shot. So they're swinging pretty fast, and they not necessarily want to hit direct center on their wedge. So if they can hit these, these little shots out on the toe that don't come off with such a reaction, then they're just going to be more confident with what they can do with that, and really treat it as a short game tool or instrument, and really utilize that area of the face, which is also being utilized by that average player. So HiToe 4 is such a unique club because of how it appeals to both ends of the spectrum. Different needs, but at the same time, it's really delivering confidence. It's just, what does confidence mean for that type of player?
Yeah. And so, I mean, having options at wedges is like forgiveness. You also got the inline, like you talked about the QI wedge. You've got that inline wedge, so you really cover all bases there. And we're getting near the hour mark, and I don't want to jump into the story before we touch on putters. And you've had a big putter story recently out there, right? So if we've got some time to talk about putters, let's just dive into the options, which you've got a lot of.
Yeah. So when it comes to putters, that's one of the things where, there's been some iconic putter designs over many, many years, 40 plus years. There's iconic shapes and functionalities that really changed the marketplace. And for us, it's Spider. And we really wanted to deliver that MOI story and say, hey, we really are the ones that put MOI, on the map back in 2008 with Spider. We wanted to really round out that putter line for us. And so the other thing was, we narrowed it down to 4 head shapes. But of those 4 head shapes, we wanted them each to have their own storyline and their benefit. And so one is the shape itself. Oftentimes when customers can be hesitant in getting into a larger mallet style putter, right? So we know that customers realize that they want some stability, but they don't want that slippery slope to where they're getting into something where maybe they kind of feel like it's too awkward. Maybe it's too Cybertruck for them, right? It's too aggressive. So we really wanted to make sure that we've got the lineup where you can get into the super high MOI, but then you also have some mallet style spiders where now the weight has actually been moved forward. So instead of external weights, now you're actually seeing those weights now creep into the internal part of the head and then even forward into the head, almost providing blade-like type of feel, but MOI head size, which offers better alignment and overall better stability. And then Scottie Scheffler decided to take the head model he likes and put an L neck on there, and that was it. That created history, and it was just amazing to see that run that he had this year, and to realize and to see the stats that it was really the putting, that really the difference maker there. Couldn't have asked for a better putter story this year. But also just to come out with those 4 head models, but then 2 hosels each. You have the short slant or you've got the double bend. So you may like a particular head style, but also have some needs with, closing the face or rotation or how you would be fitted for that putter, we wanted to make sure that every head had those two different hosel options. So that was very important for us too. So not only were we addressing, where the CG is in that putter and its MOI value, but we also wanted to address what kind of path, what kind of closure rate did we want for that player if they're going to be fitted into that head style that works best for them. But then also, let's have a forward weight version as well. So maybe someone that is coming from a blade putter.
Yeah.
You want to, and they don't want to jump all the way to the extreme version, right? And so fitting the heads, those 4 head models, and then with 2 hosels for each one, and then of course the Scottie version, we really rounded out the Spider Tour models for us this year. So Spider has been a huge hit, obviously lots of tour success, but from a fitting perspective, to be able to, that simplified message of, hey, we've got these 4 heads, they all have the same alignment to them, but we're really going to look at how much MOI. Are you craving the most MOI? Then here's your head model. Are you craving more of a balanced feel of what you want stability, but you also want a little bit more forward CG? We have that as well. So putters have been very successful this year.
We're big into the putter fit, and we spend a lot of time, a lot of investment on putter studios and being able to measure all of those things. And
sure, yeah.
And that's what it's about. Like blades are still a thing, less so. There's a lot of other advantages going on. Blade is, I don't know, it's kind of like irons, I guess, maybe some traditionalists, but there's some definite benefits to having the CG in that place and the face releasing that way. But when you do open the doors, and I think big has always been considered ugly. And I think that's what Spider's done, is it's like really tidied up. It's added that race car element, but with true benefits, the alignment, the hosels to get the flow in there, the MOI for whatever spectrum you lie on in that forgiveness or rotation requirement. That's really opened the doors for people to say, you know what, I'm not afraid to go down this road anymore and really do what they got to do.
Sure.
Okay, we're wrapping up. We're about the hour mark. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm taking too much time today, but
let's do this again. Yeah.
Let's give everyone your Scottie Scheffler tour story to wrap us up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, part of tour players, they can be pretty picky on visuals, right? And I'm sure you've heard tons of stories about how this particular player, is very involved in what goes on, and other players, they'll hit anything as long as it works, right? Well, Scottie's one of those players when it comes to drivers. He actually does like seeing a good amount of loft on the face. And with Stealth and Stealth 2, you had that bright red face. So he was seeing the face there. Well, when we went to QI, obviously, we went to a deeper blue, right? Scottie's like, well, I'm not seeing that face as much, right? And so part of the testing, we actually had to create his face is a brighter blue.
It's different to any other blue out there.
Yes. So he really has a one-off, but simply from its paint job, because that face actually is a brighter blue, because we said, okay, well, how can we get him to see the face? It's not like we want to give him more loft, right? We don't want to do it from a performance standpoint and have this trade-off. What can we do so he's just seeing the face a little bit better? So his blue is actually a little bit brighter than our standard models. So we had to turn the brightness up on his face.
We talked a little about fussy golfers, and I mean, you can call that fussy, but it's okay when you win damn near every tournament of the year. You do whatever you want.
No, whatever color he wants, I'm sure. Yeah.
Awesome. That was a great tour, Nugget. Thank you so much. And not just for that, thank you for this whole experience. Hopefully this is beneficial to people who want to learn about the TaylorMade product, that really understand all the work that goes in behind the scenes and the engineering and the fitting portion of it. These aren't just products every year for the sake of products. You're constantly achieving these new technologies to help people play better golf, and that's our motto. That's why we're here, and we really appreciate you guys putting in the yards to give us the best tools in the industry.
Yeah, Jack, it's been a pleasure. Let's do this again. I'm looking forward to doing this down the road, and anytime you want to talk shop, let's do it.
Thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it.
All right, Jack.
Cheers.